Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to Ceará, the state of Ceará in Brazil. We are here in Fortaleza. We are currently in the Triple Forum organized by IBG. IBG is the National Statistics Institute in Brazil. As the presidency of BRICS and the Triple Forum, together with Mercosur and the Portuguese-speaking countries. We have been welcomed very nicely by Fortaleza, the state government, and our colleagues from TUC. Our chief economist for Latin America and the Caribbean, Almudena, they work with Latin America. We are putting together the last conclusions from the Human Development Report. This is the Regional Human Development Report for Latin America and the Caribbean. We are welcoming Madam Director. I was thanking you for being so kind to us and having us here in Fortaleza. I was thanking the government of Ceará for having us and announcing that we will be launching the main conclusions from our Regional Human Development Report for Latin America and the Caribbean. Also, today, we will be launching a financing mechanism for human development focused on resilience so we can strengthen cooperation and improve funding and accelerate the region's access to opportunities that were explored in this Human Development Report. To start, we will listen to a message from the International Cooperation Agency from the Spanish government. They are helping us with the launch of this report. Diva Granados. Dear Jania da Silva, First Lady of Brazil, esteemed friend Michelle Mouchet, Assistant Secretary General and Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean for UNDP, esteemed Lia de Freitas, First Lady of the State of Ceará and head of the Intersectorial Ceará Committee, Senator Eduardo Gomez. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives from the governments here today. Dear friends, it is an honor to be here today in the Regional Human Development Report delivery and before the fourth council, the fourth conference on funding in Sevilla, where we will talk about crucial issues for the region and for the rest of the world that we are mentioning in this report. I would like to thank the UN, the United Nations Development Program, and the government in Brazil for putting together this event. I would like to highlight that Spain, since many years ago, has had the privilege of supporting this report through IFIT. This is the expression of our commitment with a multilateral cooperation that is solid with the UN and a transforming human development agenda for Latin America and the Caribbean. In the report we have with us here today, Recalibrating the Future of Latin America and the Caribbean, touches on all of us. Its analysis talks about how the region faces growing uncertainty, structural inequalities, and crises that are intertwined in a technological distress and climate issues that are more severe. Within this, I would like to highlight that the report frames something very valuable: resilience as the core of human development strategies, not only as a response to crises that we see right now, but as a structural change for societies to resist, transform, and adapt to things that generate vulnerabilities. This proposal fits the Spanish Cooperation Agency's agenda for sustainable development in the global spectrum and also the 2024-2025 plans. Allow me to highlight three convergence points between the report and what we are doing. Social resilience and economic resilience in the center of it, just like the report is saying, more than half of the population in the region does not have mechanisms to face adverse effects. That is why, from Spain, we are starting with a cooperation that strengthens universal social development schemes and expands fiscal spaces. It is key that these systems integrate gender equality in a cross-cutting way. This will be a center point in the Sevilla debates, how to fund policies that guarantee the rights and bring down inequalities. Secondly, digital governance and technological transition, a just technological transition with the risk that digital acceleration widens gaps of participation and right and leads to more social fragmentation. From Spain, we work towards digital transformation is based on a rights focus with inclusive ideas, democratic governance, and data ethics. We have to pay special attention to this process, not reproducing or expanding gender inequalities. And number 3, just ecological transition. The report reminds us that climate change impacts are deepening inequalities and affecting the livelihoods of different peoples in the region. For Spain, it is a priority to walk with our Latin America and Caribbean partners, focusing on sustainable development ideas and focusing on climate change throughout different nations. This will be part of the Sevilla agenda together with COP30 goals. Because of all that, we believe that publishing the report right now is strategic. It gives us very valuable ideas in an international context, not only because of how close it is to Sevilla and the COP30 sessions, because we were actually debating about the future of international cooperation and the need for reinforcing multilateralism. Spain wants to actively contribute to these debates from a horizontal, triangular way and based on shared knowledge. With this spirit, I would like to reiterate today our vision focused on human development. Just like the report is saying, it's not only about growing, but actually about protecting life, dignity, and the liberty of people. You can rely on the Spanish cooperation so we can move together towards this goal. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to join you virtually for the presentation of the findings of UNDP's 2025 Regional Human Development Report for Latin America and the Caribbean. This report is more than an analysis. It symbolizes a unique collaboration and trusted relationship spanning 6 decades between UNDP and the people of this vibrant region, forging a shared vision for the future. The analysis highlights how the region has achieved remarkable progress. From the year 2000 to the year 2023, the poverty rate was halved from 50% to 25%. The proportion of children out of school also dropped dramatically, from 1 in 4 to just 1 in 10 over the same period. Civic participation also burns bright, with voter turnout in some nations topping 70%, a testament to the region's profound and vibrant democratic vocation. These statistics also tell a deeper story. They are a tribute to the region's potential, vision, and determination. Latin America and the Caribbean region thrives on its remarkable cultural and natural diversity, nurturing nearly 50% of the world's biodiversity, and is powered by the ingenuity and resolve of its people. As part of the United Nations family, UNDP has been proud to advance the global goals with communities across the Latin America and Caribbean region. That includes everything from empowering women's cooperatives in Peru and accelerating renewable energy adoption in Costa Rica, to expanding access to justice in Brazil and deploying digital infrastructure in Trinidad and Tobago. Yet, after decades of steady development gains, the region faces a convergence of structural challenges interrelated with the rapid technological transformation, growing social fragmentation, and the accelerating impacts of climate change. The COVID-19 pandemic was a stark turning point, disrupting development trajectories and exposing their vulnerabilities. As this new report reveals, progress in human development, measured by achievements in health, education, and income, has significantly slowed, with the pace of advancement declining by more than half between the years 2015 and 2023. Furthermore, although poverty rates have continued to decline, Latin America and the Caribbean remains one of the slowest regions globally in achieving poverty reduction. This era of uncertainty isn't merely a passing squall, it's in some ways the new normal. While it undeniably brings risks, it also creates the chance to rethink and reimagine development to ensure that progress endures. This brings us to the core message of this report, the need to place resilience at the center of the development agenda. That is the thinking behind UNDP's Latin American Caribbean facility for financing Resilient Human Development, which we are launching today to support countries in implementing the recommendations from the report. Its unique value lies in enhancing financing conditions, advocating for better loan terms and development-focused debt instruments, while accelerating delivery by unlocking stalled loans and new investments, bolstering countries' resilience to interconnected shocks, including those tied to climate change. In doing so, it aims to help countries transform resilience from aspiration into action. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as UNDP marks its 60th anniversary in 2025, this report reflects our enduring commitment to advancing human development in Latin America and the Caribbean. Crucially, it is more than a diagnosis of challenges. By anticipating risks and identifying new opportunities, it sends a clear message. Reimagining development strategies with resilience at their core is not just beneficial, it is in fact imperative for advancing human development across the region. I hope the insights and strategies in this report ignite meaningful conversations and inspire bold and united action. Together, we can advance resilience, inclusivity, and sustainable progress, building futures truly worthy of the bold aspirations of people across Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Hakeem. Hakeem is the new global head for UBNU. Pretty inspiring message, highlighting the progress in the last 20 years in Brazil, as well as the fragilities and the importance on resilience. We have now Her Excellency Lia de Freitas, First Lady of Ceará, now, most importantly, head of the Intersectorial Committee of Ceará Sem Fome. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you for your hospitality here in Fortaleza. Thank you very much, Claudio. I would like to greet Almudena Fernandes, Chief Economist for the region with UNDP, Bettina Barbosa, who is with us. She is a Chief Economist with the Human Development with UNDP Brazil. And also Esther, who is with us, the Management and Public Services Innovation Minister. Thank you for being with us virtually. The Science and Technology Minister for Brazil, Luciana Santos, and our General Secretary for UNDP and Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean, Michelle, who should also be with us virtually. So thank you. I am honored to be here. We represent Ceará in this forum, Claudio, our representative from Brazil, with brother nations. As a woman coming from the public management sector and working with this committee and leading a program that was created to satisfy the needs of those who live with hunger here in Ceará. And we try to put together this intersectorial effort for the people here in Ceará. And while talking about this, this is very much connected to UNDP, not only Ceará, but throughout all of Brazil, fighting social inequality, eradicate hunger, and also guarantee food security for our Ceará brothers. Since most of the people in our region are women, men, women, children, and informal workers, this is what we see in the Global South. And hunger needs something, an articulated and sustainable effort. And from the beginning, from the governor's efforts, which started in January 2023, and then in February, we implemented, after a collective consultation process here in the state, even throughout 2022, as we were transitioning, we put together a pact, a Ceará society, as well as an international society. We had some international collaboration, and then in 2023 we created this program where we meant to eradicate hunger with joint efforts with the public sector, society, and the entire territory. This is how today we provide close to 120,000 foods or meals a day. These are social kitchens. We purchase foods from family-led farms to a generator to have more food security. We also do nutritional awareness, put together nutritional awareness campaigns, and also grants supporting families focused on social policies. The value of this program is very important. We should highlight the community as a part of this program, our social participation. Communities really roll out these policies. We are seeking social justice. We've put together a website for this, Ceará Without Hunger, which is not only owned by the state, it's actually the public and federal power. They have a program fighting hunger. It's called Bolsa Familia, or Food Basket. We have it here too, and this is a very good hunger eradication program. Here, on this table, we have important international collaboration as a solution of UNDP's role with countries in the South, supporting social technologies, local technologies, and we make our program available to you so we can look into funding programs in the region led by women, especially community-led programs. This is a program that has a very much a woman or women-oriented focus, but not only them, but these are the women who really end up working and not caring for their families and for their children, and they are in a vulnerable position, but these are also women who have a sense of teamwork, and they are working with this, and also creating a fund for food sovereignty for this forum. And this is part of what we want to do, and we would like to encourage people to work together and exchange experiences and talk about sustainable development goals. And so we hope that Ceará can prove that it is possible to fight hunger with the public's participation, with a structured public consultation. This is something we have worked very hard on. Even today, we are celebrating a year of a structural effort we've been strongly putting together, and hopefully this forum is a catalyst for partnerships focusing on dignity, decent meals, and justice for all peoples, especially in the global South. So thank you very much for giving us this opportunity so we can build this and work together for a better future, a better world, a more just and solidary world. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you very much, Madame de Freitas. It is definitely an honor to be here, but most importantly, listen, you see, yesterday we were talking about some of the challenges of how a state lives, and you talking about poverty and inequality and hunger. You're very passionate about this. Brazil, a country considered the granary of the world, a pretty important farming industry and a lot of land extension. But we saw that during COVID, the northeastern states were lagging behind when it comes to human development rates. They were the ones who had the greater performance to withstand or to navigate COVID and save lives. And because the region is important, and this is a good segue to our next speaker and partner of UN, Minister Dweck. She is the minister of the ministry that manages and innovates, focusing on public services. Welcome, Madam Minister. Bon dia. Go ahead, ma'am. Thank you for being here. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you. Thank you very much for calling me a friend. Quite frankly, this is an important collaboration. Here at the ministry level with UNDP, So I wanted to say hello to Mr. Steiner, our and UNDP administrator, Michelle as well, with the regional office for Latin America, and we are happy. We have the honor of having all three of them here in the launch of our regional report. I also wanted to greet Mr. Freitas. We have the presence of the Ceará with No Hunger team, Ms. Granados, who also works with the Spanish government and the Spanish Agency for International Development. Bettina, I cannot see her in the video, but she's an important collaborator working with us, and we are here launching this regional report. I have actually participated in some events because as a minister for public services, in this report, this regional human development report, we've been able to closely take a look at the challenges that our region faces. And we say we are the ministry of the how. It's not so much about how to do it, but actually how to do what is necessary. I think that this report is very important and decisive as well. And Latin America and the Caribbean can and will provide an answer to some of the global issues that exist. Out of the growing crises, we see this situation we're going through. We have some digital and climate situations right now that are obviously marked by our history and by deep inequalities and our different situations as a society and issues with natural resources for a region that has been historically marked by the exploitation of natural resources in a very intense way. And today, we are trying to face that climate situation. We challenge our society, but mainly our state. In this region, something we've put in the report that we are concerned about is the decrease of IDH growth rate. It continues to grow, but at a slower rate, going from 0.7% to 0.2% per year, and with a lot of inequalities and challenges. This is something that has to be faced, tackled, and dealt with. We still have half of the population without any mechanisms so they can face adverse events, and we have an increase of economic uncertainty and 30% of our people living with vulnerabilities. So, as we go into this report, we can see the importance of the state. The state is key for changes and to guarantee a sustainable movement in our region. During the pandemic, which was already highlighted here, and Claudio has already mentioned that. Can you all hear me? I think it froze. Like Claudio was saying, he mentioned that during the pandemic, some northeastern states in Brazil, in the north and south of Brazil, had better conditions, but this was because of the way the state responded to those situations. At the time, state agencies had an important role, and we felt that some states that have robust systems, public registry that is reliable, and if they have robust health systems, those states were able to protect their population better, and those who didn't went through a greater impact. Processes, technologies, and acting in a time of crisis, but also to change people's lives. And this ministry works trying to act on situations, and we have that capability, and we look into protecting people's lives and change people's reality. And this report reminds us of how important it is to review situations and instructions so they are proper so we can face our challenges. And when we say resilience, which is a big word in this report, that word relies on the flexibility so we can deal with unforeseen situations. And we have to keep this mentality. We have to be flexible, stay nimble so we can face different situations, and therefore stimulate innovation in public services. As a matter of fact, most of the important situations that the public sees as key so we can get public institutions to be trusted again. And with this research we did together with UNDP, 40% of the population in the region trusts democracies, which is somewhat concerning because we really need to regain people's trust in the public sector so we can expand or increase our legitimacy. So beyond public policies that are in place and rendering results, every time a person accesses something that gives them an effective answer, this is one more vote or one more point for democracy. And this is something we often see. And because of the inequalities we see in our region, we have to think about diversity, equity policies, or equitable policies. And this has to be a commitment for the entire region. People of color, women, LGBTQ communities, and more, and some other people who've been marginalized, they have to be acknowledged and recognized as key stakeholders in a development process. Think about the state in the future. As you are building our institutions in the present, this state has to be efficient. When it does whatever it needs to do, it has to be green, digital, and inclusive. Green, because we know that 30% of the population is exposed to climate risks, extreme climate risks. So the state has to think about ecologic transformation of its region. It has to be digital because digital sovereignty is our democratic sovereignty. It's only 2% right now of the population in the region having access to 5G connections. And it is 4 times more expensive than it is in a developed nation. It has to be inclusive because, like we said, for democracy, people have to be subject to rights. They have to know how much does the state impact their lives. Generational impact so that generations right now can protect the lives of people in the future, for every single living being in the future. So I think that the report highlights this. This, as well as some other global initiatives. We have AI. We've talked about the risks of AI. We cannot allow AI to deepen exclusions and inequalities we see in the globe. In Brazil, we put together a program called AI for the well-being of everyone. With the government, we've been working a lot with AI. It should complement human abilities and not replace them. And it should promote inclusion and not focus on privileges. It should promote the region's autonomy and independence. The report, the global report, but especially the regional report, highlights that Brazil has had, in the past few years, a series of situations like this one, and something we highlight a lot here is public structures. The PIX, which is a digital payment system that has 17 million users in Brazil, the Bolsa Familia, or the food basket program, which is based on a public structure, can secure massive transfers for millions of Brazilians, and this technology was actually used during the pandemic as an emergency when we needed people to stop working and stay home, this was key so we could guarantee assistance to families in a critical time worldwide. This enabled us to strengthen what we were doing and increasing connectivity and moving forward as a digital government. Also, this is not just a one-time thing. This is not an isolated situation. The future of Latin America needs collective satisfaction. So that report compels us to put together a new pact, and we are talking about this, and that is, with resilience, we need to move towards resilient economies and societies so we can change our future. Our Latin America and Caribbean peoples are very talented people with a rich history that is focused on finding solutions to face challenges, to overcome challenges, and we are thinking about the state of the future. But what is the future of the states in the region? This is a political decision that has to be made. Having us here, saying hello to the members of this panel, especially to the Ceará government. Thank you very much, Madam Minister Dweck. It is an honor for us to have you, always have you, in such provoking topics, the Ministry of the How, and talking about an efficient government that can actually deliver on its promise, as well as focus on democracy and juggle between those gains that come with development, but looking into new challenges that are ahead of us in the future. And we have a video of the minister before we hand it over to Michelle Mouchette. We have Luciana Santos, the Minister for Science and Technology here in Brazil. She, together with the Innovation and Management Ministry, they lead one of the most important topics that the report touches on, which is artificial intelligence. Minister Luciana Santos, go ahead, please. It is a pleasure for me to be able to share with you in this very relevant report on human development, 2025 report. Hello to the members of the table who are with us virtually and in person here in Ceará. This is a key initiative in collaboration with IBGE, the Statistics Institute, and congratulations to the organizers for shedding light on this. These are deep transformational times and complex situations. Our populations and peoples are going through different crises in parallel with climate situations and digital changes that are happening at a fast pace. We see deep inequalities and social fragmentation. These are things that need comprehensive, integrated answers, and they have to be innovative too. This report provides us with a lot of information focusing on resilience that is no longer an option. This is something very necessary for human development. The Brazilian government is committed with doing something about it. I talked to the minister, and we are currently doing things to tackle that. We are talking about putting together science and technology public policies. Also focused on the environment, we are thinking about digital infrastructure so we can reduce inequalities and promote digital inclusion, betting on research and development and green technologies and climate adaptation. Supporting different industries so we can generate employment and productivity or profitability. As a matter of fact, with the Brazilian AI program that is attempting to include and make Brazil a more robust society as we go into the age of AI and new technologies. Given this scenario, given new things we see with AI, our ministry is committed to placing that technology and making it available so there is a growth program for the entire nation and helping to reduce inequalities. This is the whole idea around our plan. We launched that last year for the well being of everyone. In the face of these opportunities and given our day to day situations, we are trying to change science in a pillar that is more sustainable, a just digital transition is part of the pillars of this strategy. We hope that global and regional issues should be faced in a different way. That is why we are focusing on collaboration, because the future of Latin America and the Caribbean needs joint efforts. Awareness, focusing on cooperation and the fact that we can build a future together where development is sustainable, just, and capable of seeing the needs in our times. Congratulations once again for this key contribution. I also congratulate the Ceará government for being a core co-organizer of this forum. Hopefully this report will inspire concrete actions that are good for a common purpose, promoting the development of Latin America, making it sustainable, and it will hopefully be what the president has put into this regional integration process. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a great event. Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Santos. Thank you for your kind words. The two ministers, as well as State Secretary Granados, have highlighted how important technology is and artificial intelligence. And now we have Michelle Bouchet. She is the Assistant Secretary General and the Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean with UNDP. She's been also a policymaker. She was heading a ministry in her home country, so she is more than qualified to share a few thoughts from both perspectives. Michelle, it's too bad you cannot be here, ma'am, in Ceará, but we know this is a critical week for transitions in New York, so we are very happy to have you here with us, especially in a panel led and comprised mainly by women. So, welcome, ma'am. Thank you very much, dear Claudio, for that generous introduction. I would definitely have loved to be there with you, especially listening to the wonderful interjections from our colleagues in the room and those of you who are with us virtually. I would like to start by thanking Achim Steiner, administrator of the UNDP and our Spanish Agency for International Development and Cooperation agent, and Mr. Freitas, dear Minister Esther Dweck, Minister Luciana Santos, and my friends Nuria Villanova, Jaime Diaz, whom I see are signed in, and Almudena Fernandez, Chief Economist for UNDP in Latin America and the Caribbean, and all the excellencies, authorities, colleagues, friends who are with us here today. And I am very proud and committed, but mostly with a great responsibility, that today we share the main findings in the Regional Human Development Report for Latin America and the Caribbean 2025. Those who've spoken before me have referenced in one way or another to the great complexity of the world we live in today. One world marked by growing geopolitical tensions, high economic volatility, accelerated technological changes, as well as social changes that in our region, Latin America and the Caribbean, converge with persistent structural vulnerabilities such as low productivity rates, high informality, inequalities, keeping us as the most unequal region in the world, vulnerabilities, poverty, as well as projections for low growth, economic growth, which are tied to high levels of debt that shrink a fiscal space for sustainable development. And this also converges with a disproportionate exposure to clashes, sanitary clashes, political clashes, climate clashes, technological clashes as well. They're ever more frequent, more intense, but more interconnected between each other. And we also face deep governance issues and insufficient institutional capacity so we can face emerging crises, which has in one way or another become the brewing point for the rise of divisive narratives in a very polarized world, the increase of insecurity, and very much a growing concern with organized crime. And this convergence of factors between global ones and ones that are very characteristic of Latin America and the Caribbean in its development are not only shifting the ground towards development, but it is generating a lot of uncertainty and putting a lot of pressure on development in and of itself. And this pressure is felt specifically by decision makers today. Also, at the same time, the region has proven throughout its history a capability, a great capability to transform, frequently transform pressures into development and innovation opportunities. And that is how, in past decades, the region was able to make great advances, and we have to recognize that in terms of human development, poverty reduction. Brazil being one of the main countries in the region that led this poverty reduction, democratic consolidation, and economic growth, taking the region to be recognized as a region of mid-income, a mid-income region. However, we haven't been able to become a consolidated mid-income region, and this progress consensus has been unequal and started to stagnate even before we were hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. And as the pandemic hit us, this was devastating for the region. We had the highest mortality rates, economic recession, backstepping in human development, evidencing what we've been able to show with this report, evidencing that as a region, we are particularly vulnerable to backpedaling as we've been attempting to develop, and this vulnerability is today causing the people, communities, feel that fragility that translates into little optimism around the future, and this lack of optimism towards the future, this sense of fear, fragility, uncertainty is today limiting the sense of freedom and belonging that is a key part of human development. But today we are here because we are joined by a shared vision that Latin America and the Caribbean has all the potential to calibrate its development trajectory. I can talk about some of the items around this potential without doing a comprehensive review because it's a lot. We are the third most democratic region in the world and the most democratic in terms of development. We are today, by this, the only region with the real possibility to move forward in development through processes and democratic mechanisms. We are a global power in diversity, 50% of biodiversity in the world, and the birth of key resources for digital transformation, as well as other projects in terms of development. We are a key stakeholder in food security globally, in defending multilateralism, democratic governance, and climate action in the world. Brazil will be the head of the next COP30, proving that leadership. And we have a population that is young, dynamic, that as it is connected with cultural diversity and that level of entrepreneurship in the public and private sector, offers a series of unique opportunities for development. And in the past, we've been a reference for public policies that are innovative, and we are a region very much open. And this has been said by the ministers before me. We continue to innovate, but one of the regions with the most amount of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial activity led by women, mostly, just like we've seen with mostly women ministers, as well as men. But here, there's something we have to fine-tune, be able to translate all of this great potential, transform pressure points into a force that will drive us to move forward, and this needs a lot of adjustments in the trajectory of development, clearly recognizing that what worked in the past may not work today. And repeating things will not be enough because the context has changed and we can no longer think about human development without mechanisms in order to withstand adversity, recover from those adversities, and strengthen capabilities so we can continue to prosper. And it is this the key focus of the Human Development Report, which results we are sharing with you today. The report proposes a decisive step, and that is an evolution of human development theory. And that's the whole concept around human development focused on resilience as an agent for change and effective changes for people. But that development, that human development that is resilient, has to be the path to get back on track towards development in this region. And it is that in such a changing, unpredictable, uncertain future, we need to adapt, but also transform ourselves. And when uncertainty weakens collective capabilities, attempting to imagine a future together, there is an erosion of that collective action, and individual possibilities are stifled. That is why resilience is important, not only for progress, but also to generate new well-being possibilities and for progress as well. Allow me to clarify something here that Almudena will expand on during her interjection. The resilience in this report is not unequal to resilience, resisting and not breaking. Resilience is a possibility, a stepping stone so we can move forward and be stronger as we move forward. It is not only about shielding against risk nor eliminating risk, but actually ensuring that when crises come, and they will come, we have the collective capability of coming together, building and rebuilding without backing down when it comes to rights and freedoms. And we know that no country can do it alone. This is why this report, more than a rigorous concept framework for it, and it is that it is meant to be a resource and a practical tool to support the region, support decision makers, individuals, communities, to recalibrate institutions, infrastructure, the current instruments to not only focus on a development that brings together social, economic, and environmental issues, but also focuses on resilience and keep it in the center of it and not just a consequence of what happens around us. This report reflects on our effort, or shows our effort, to focus on public debate and keep on the forefront in innovation and public policies and multilateral cooperation. And in this recalibration of institutions, infrastructure, and instruments, we are attempting to align it with the urgency and the reality of the challenges that impact us today so we can provide solutions that are effective and quick. And in this spirit, and very much aware that there is no time to lose, today we will also present the facility for funding for resilient human development funding in Latin America and the Caribbean, which is a specific tool that stems out of the report. It gives more traction to what we want to do, and it is focused on resilience based on action. And we will also have an event in the framework of the fourth conference for funding in Sevilla, and the state secretary for cooperation from Spain already alluded to it. And we at UNDP, we understand funding as not only a thing around numbers, but an actual accelerator of resilient human development in the face of what this report is saying. We understand funding as a bet on dignity and hope, and this facility in the service of the region promotes collaboration and South-South cooperation. It supports funding focused on development and unlocks investments that could be stuck based on strategic planning, and it is ambitious and clear, be a catalyst to enable resilient human development in the region. In a year where UNDP is celebrating its 60th anniversary, this report reiterates our commitment with Latin America and the Caribbean and its human development, and our trust in the potential that this report brings, attempting to push a paradigm shift, just like human development reports have been doing since 1990. What we are taking on, we take this on with the utmost commitment. I would like to thank the Special Agency for International Development and Cooperation, IACIT. Truly thank them for their support, commitment, and shared values with human development in Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as for representing that international cooperation spirit that is in this work. I would also like to thank the notable members of the advisory group for the report for their time, their effort, their commitment, selfless interest, and Brazilian government authorities in Ceará for having us today. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, the future may look uncertain, but it is not yet written. There are a series of possibilities for the future that go through a collective decision. And this Human Development Report is indefinite, an open process to reimagine and do it together. Reimagine a future filled with possibilities, putting in the center of it resilience, and at the same time, this is also an invitation so we can build on that together, bringing the government, civil society, academia, the banking sector, private sector, multilateral institutions. In other words, this report attempts to be hope, because that is what development is, an agenda for hope. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much, Michelle. You've covered a little bit of everything: vulnerability, volatility, weaknesses, some progress, but you finish on a hopeful note and you bring a lot of optimism, and you mention the word tools, public policy, so that your pragmatism does encourage us to act in a state and in a country. I remember last year, President Lula in the G20, in front of the 20 richest countries in the world, back in July, he was saying that hunger, and we were talking about this with the First Lady, this is a political decision. It's not only a technical challenge. And we are here in Brazil, a Brazil that has taken on human development since 30 years ago and has become the standard for measuring and comparing process. It has become a benchmark. So we are now happy to invite Almudena Fernandez, our chief economist, to present the report to all of you. I would like to ask Dr. Barbosa Ventita to please be with us, because he will be facilitating the next portion. Bettina is our director for the human development area in Brazil, and she is quite the expert in this topic. That way we can strengthen our women-led team. Thank you very much, Claudio. Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you very much, Administrator Steiner, Secretary of State Granados, Ms. Great and Santos, and First Lady Freitas. Thank you for being with us in this first part of the event, this launch of the findings in our Regional Development Report for Latin America and the Caribbean, which we've titled Under Pressure: Recalibrating the Future of Development in Latin America and the Caribbean. Michelle has already talked about why talk about these issues in our Human Development Report. Let me just go into the findings specifically. Why do we say the region is under pressure? If we take a look at the region's trajectory in the past few decades, we see that after sustained progress in terms of human development in the region over the course of several decades, in the mid-2010s and 2015 or so, we see an important stagnation of that progress. If we take a look at the Human Development Index, which is published by the United Nations Development Program, this indicator grows as it is measured in the 1990s up to 2015 at a sustained pace, 0.7%, and as of 2015, this growth rate is halved. In the pandemic, we see a backpedaling or backstepping of this for the first time, and after the pandemic, we were able to recover and go back to pre-pandemic levels. The growth trend in the region does not go back to the trend we saw before the pandemic, and the speed of growth, the rate of growth, continues to stagnate. Accelerating, no longer we are looking at human development. There is almost stagnation in human development. We see this in the terms of Human Development Index, but we also see it when we take a look at poverty indicators, when we see indicate different development indicators. We do see the same trend, the same pattern. A lot of progress, good progress in the first few decades since the 2000s, but a de-acceleration of this trend. We also see that the development trend in the region, while we've seen a lot of advances and the region was able to halve poverty in the 2000s, there is also a group of people who are vulnerable, meaning they are not poor, but they are not also in the stable middle class group. That number of vulnerable people is a group of the population that does not go down. It is always about 30% of the population. And in moments where poverty goes down, that group is still in the 30% mark. Today, we see that if we consider that 30% of the population that, while they are not poor, is highly vulnerable to falling into poverty if they are exposed to an adverse event because they do not have the mechanism to withstand these events, that 30%, together with 25% of people in the region who are actually poor, we see that more than 50% of the population in Latin America and the Caribbean is exposed to going through important losses in their well-being and human development if they were exposed to adverse events, whether they be moderate losses in their human development, where even though the shock is temporary, it can end up being temporary. They may not be able to recover or go back to those well-being situations or that well-being status. So the message is summarizing this growth trend we've seen in the past few decades in the region. First, acknowledge, like Michelle said, the great progress in the region when it comes to progress in human development, but also recognize that this progress was very much unequal. It stagnated in the past few decades, something we should ask ourselves. Why did we see this stagnation? And this progress is vulnerable, very fragile, therefore it is subject to backpedaling as it goes through adverse events and adversities. This is very important in the context we live in today, where we see that the world and global economies and regional economies are ever more exposed to uncertainties. Taking different uncertainty measures, we see that in the region, uncertainty ever since 1990 has tripled. In the world, there is it has grown significantly, but we see that in Latin America, uncertainty is systematically greater than that of the world. In the last set of data for 2025, and compare that to 2024, we see a period in the world where there's a lot of uncertainty. We see that uncertainty in Latin America in the last few months grew by 101%, meaning a very important peak. Obviously, this is just a spike. This may not be the trend, but this is just to show how volatile uncertainty is in the region. This is why in the report we talk about a new era of uncertainty. This new era has a series of dynamics that cross paths. We see the risk we all know, the ones we've had in the region since forever, and in one way or another we've seen some risk management models, risks such as hurricanes in some regions that are exposed to hurricanes, or droughts in regions that are exposed to droughts, or El Nino phenomenon in regions that are exposed to the El Nino phenomenon. However, with these traditional risks or well-known risks, we see that they are more intense and more frequent. That is why those risk management models that are based on historical patterns are ever less precise, so we can read what is coming in the future, so we can manage those risks as we go into the future. And these traditional risks intertwine with a series of new threats that come out of dynamics that are changing societies and changing regional economies, new threats that are connected to technologies that are changing and emerging at a rate we had never seen before. New threats related to a deepening of societal fragmentation, which show us a climate that is always more concerning, and we see extreme climate situations and some other climate change situations, and all of this is connected and feeds each other into structural issues we see in the region, such as high levels of inequality, volatility in growth rates in the region, low productivity, and a geographical exposure to extreme weathers in the region. All of this combined leads to seeing more and more what we call an interconnected crisis. These are no longer isolated shocks, but actually shocks that are more and more connected to each other, that start in a given place and will quickly cause a domino effect into other sectors and other geographical areas, and then quickly will have an impact that is ever greater. For example, droughts that can prolong and impact the use of energy in countries that have an energy matrix that use hydropower, which can have an impact on local economies, which can then have an impact in the labor market, which will lead to social unrest. This is how these crises are connected. Now, this uncertainty we see in the region is not only important or concerning to us in terms of development because of the backstepping it can cause when these things actually happen, but it also concerns us because of what it intrinsically means for human development. As part of the regional report, we put together a qualitative report in 10 countries in the region where we went into interviews, long interviews with people of vulnerable people, not the poorest people, but not people living in middle class, people in that vulnerability bracket. And what we were able to see in this qualitative study over and over was people living one day at a time. So how little people are able to think about the future, act based on a future, or invest into something towards a future which they believe is better. They cannot do this because they have to cover their basic needs today. A sense of hopelessness and not being able to think about a better future for them and their children. That, in its essence, is an erosion of people's possibilities and not being able to take control of their own lives and not being able to improve their lives. This is, we see this as people being able to do things and develop as human beings. This is what UNDP wants to do. That is why in the report we talk about human development in this context. We live it in the region. If we do not think about resilience, it is no longer feasible. Resilience has to be understood in a broader sense. So, just like Michelle said, we propose a definition of resilient human development, always using human development as the goal, taking this whole idea of human development that this is actually expandable. We can expand or extend people's possibilities and connecting that to the human possibility idea that protects people. And if we add to those two concepts, the idea of having an environment that will allow people to recover and prosper even when they are affected by an adverse effect or event. So this resilient human being concept is worried about people's possibilities and expanding those possibilities and protecting these possibilities in their day-to-day activities, and in the case of an adverse event, based on people's capabilities and households and their possibilities, provide an environment that will allow them to prosper beyond an adverse event. This report goes into three main things that put pressure on development in the region. The first one is rapid evolution of technologies. Technologies that are moving at a fast pace, which we had never seen before. We looked into several angles when it comes to human development, but in a very quick summary, what we see is that there is great progress attempting to adopt technology. Latin America and the Caribbean is a region that adopts technologies and uses technologies. However, there is an unequal adoption that is somewhat widening structural inequalities that already exist in the region. We see accelerated pace in adopting AI, which is promising. However, there are still structural barriers or obstacles for this adoption. If we compare our region to more advanced economies, we see Latin America when it comes to infrastructure, and this had already been mentioned by Minister Dueck, when we're talking about more basic infrastructure for connectivity, such as access to 3G technologies, Latin America has made a lot of progress, or basic digital abilities. But when we go into more sophisticated abilities or digital abilities that are more sophisticated, which are the ones that will actually allow you to tap into these new technologies so you can increase your productivity and get more economic growth, and to actually use these technologies as a driver for development, this is where we see the region falling behind, where just a small portion of the population will have access to infrastructures or to sophisticated skills. We see a regional summary that what mixes up the numbers is that just a few countries in the region have access to 5G, Brazil being one of them. We also see a lot of inequalities within and throughout countries when we compare access to the internet in the richest homes and the poor homes. Within countries, we see that richer households have twice as much access than poor places on average. When we compare urban and rural areas, we see the same differences. So there is a lot of inequality when it comes to access to the internet. One promising idea is that AI is being used very much, especially in the public sector, in order to boost or to speed up how governments provide services to citizens, how the government interacts with citizens to provide public services. We see 24 countries in the region, more than 2/3 of the countries in the region that are actually using AI so that they can improve their healthcare services, education, social protection, citizen safety, and other types of services. This is very promising. It can really improve the quality of services in the region. This is a very important issue. It can improve trust in among citizens and government. But this type of adoption means that we have to take on some risks that come with AI, like some biases that AI algorithms have, gender biases, biases against marginalized communities, biases since the data that is used to train AI has biases, and also managing risks that are connected to cyber attacks. So Latin America and the Caribbean and its capability to adopt digital technologies and new digital technologies will need human capital investments, digital infrastructure investments, responsible data management, and managing ecological, technological ecosystems so it's more inclusive, so it can improve or boost productivity. About looking into social fragmentation in Latin America, we see that trust, which is an indicator of how effective situations shape Latin America. We see that this has been decreased in Latin America. People no longer trust institutions. People no longer trust each other. The only thing that we still see is trust between closest communities, so between familial groups and closest communities. This is related to uncertainty, fear, and expectations that have been interrupted lead to people sheltering in their closest circles and move away from people they see as different. This is also combined with a distrust or people unhappy with mobility in countries, and there is a lack of trust or unhappiness with some government institutions, which are causing people to move away from traditional political parties. And this has also led to people supporting leaders that are strong men. So supporting traditional parties is not so popular, and now more people support strong men. So this is changing the way people connect with their lawmakers. This is all happening in a region, in a time where the region is ever more polarized. Latin America is now the most polarized region in the world, where polarization is growing the most in the past few years, and the gap between those who feel represented by the government and those who feel excluded from the government is ever greater, and this has implications in human development. This causes poor governance. It is harder to govern. It is harder to come to governance agreements. It generates. It is difficult to generate coalitions. It opens up the space for expansions, and then organized criminal groups can fill in those gaps, and it opens spaces for migration flows, which we see in the region, and since people do not see their needs met wherever it is they live. Going to the third big topic, an ever-changing climate. Climate change is not a new thing, but we see that this is a reality in the region. This is something that citizens live with every day. We see that the frequency of extreme climate events is more frequent. We see it more and more. Wherever we look, we see that the number of extreme climate events has doubled in Latin America and the Caribbean in the past few decades compared to previous decades. We also see that climate change exacerbates inequalities. The countries with the greater rate of development can adapt, but we see more problems in countries that have more extreme climates. So the ones with the highest well-being rates are more ready to adapt to climate change than those that lag behind. So climate resilience should not be only for groups that are wealthier. This can exacerbate or make climate problems worse. And Latin America is now facing the need for managing short-term climate issues in its societies. And in the mid and long term, we have to take a look at greenhouse gas emissions and how to decrease them. And we see that the population is ever more concerned about climate change effects in their lives. But when they are asked about economic growth and taking care of the environment, which one is more important, people continue to believe that economic growth is more important. So there is some tension between these issues, and we have to manage that risk. So one message before going into recommendations, and that is that issues in Latin America are very great. We see three here, but we know that in the next few years, some other new relevant challenges will come along. What the report is trying to talk about is that if we manage this risk by risk or topic by topic, is not possible since we do not know how we're going to get hit. This uncertainty makes risk come from different angles where we do not expect them. We've seen risks that we did not expect to see. That is why we have this message where we have to prepare homes, people, societies throughout the region so they can be ready to withstand and overcome adverse events whenever they happen, wherever they happen from. That is why we say that Latin America needs new tools for development, tools that are appropriate for the times and with the right resilience, or resilience in the center of it. And the report proposes a very simple framework. This is a broad framework. We know that any public policy idea has to be catered to the country, to the region, but in a framework where we propose that the instruments have to be revisited. They have to build resilience. Institutions have to be able to cover the complexities of the new risks and the new challenges we face, and instruments that can actually generate spaces that build resilience. So this is a framework we call the 3 I's in Spanish, so broad, where we think that through these 3 things we can hopefully reach resilience. Now, on instruments, there's something key here. We have to go beyond instruments and poverty reduction instruments. If resilience is something you would have to build, or a byproduct, or something that happens organically as countries bring down poverty or as countries grow economically, Latin America and the Caribbean would be resilient because Latin America reduced poverty and it grew economically. But that is not the case. That is why we believe that building resilience needs a different set of instruments. Now, with regards to how we think about these instruments, one thing is coverage. Here, insisting in universality is important. What we see in Latin America consistently in many countries, some have moved towards universality, some other ones have not. The most poor countries do have access to social protection systems that are non-contributory, and those with formal labor markets have access to non-contributory systems, and those with labor markets have access to social protection systems that are contributory. Those in that vulnerable bracket in the informal sector do not have access to any kind of social protection. Therefore, they're not protected at all in case of adverse events. This is part of what makes them vulnerable. So how do we expand coverage so we can cover that vulnerable portion of the population? Also think about intervention. The region has made a lot of progress when it comes to monetary conditions and protections, conditioned and not conditioned, but resilience is built generating and helping homes to accrue assets that will make them more productive, that will allow them to have better savings and have a bit of a safety net so they can wither the storm, or i.e. crises, and this is something we have to do in instruments that think about recovery. How can we make sure that those who do actually suffer adverse events, especially in different cycles of life, where being exposed to a shock can have permanent effects, like early childhood or getting inserted in the labor market? There should be programs focused on that impact in those periods of time does not become a permanent impact throughout life. Now, with regards to institutions, there are three main principles. Institutions that can prepare for known risks, as well as risks that we do not know of right now, meaning that we can do prospective analyses, scenario analyses, be able to be more nimble and coordinate between sectors, coordinate between different levels of government. Coordination between sectors is key. We often see that the social sector talks very little with risk reduction or emergency management, which makes them very inefficient when it comes to responding to disasters. So that coordination is key, as well as territorial continuity throughout the entire state, which is key because resilience is built in the territory and being present in the entire national territory. And now, so I can close, and this is on resilient infrastructure. This is not only about physical infrastructure facing the climate, this is key, but also thinking about digital public infrastructure, an infrastructure that will allow us to, through digitalization, have interoperable systems so we can be ready to provide services, provide benefits in times of crises, have systems that can operate even when some systems are down due to shocks, and also infrastructure that will allow us to shorten those gaps between groups. We see social fragmentation, and infrastructure has a key role to play in social cohesion. So how do we think about an infrastructure that can shorten some of the gaps and make these groups, allow these groups to have collective spaces so they can talk more? And as I close, a key takeaway, and I think Michelle said it clearly, is that resilience is not about avoiding the shocks or trying to minimize them. This is impossible. We have to understand where we are, but it is actually about generating an environment where people, individuals, and homes know that when an adverse event comes, they have the capability, they have an environment that will allow them to recover and prosper, so they have enough of a capability so they can control their lives in the future. And through this, set the path forward for Latin America and the Caribbean. This report has a series of tools. Michelle has already mentioned them, but we are today launching the facility for funding for human development, resilient human development. This is a platform that we believe will be a stepping point for resilient human development, and we believe there is space so that UNDP can bring together different stakeholders and sit them down so we can work on innovative ideas, new funding that have an impact, bring intelligence to development, provide risk analysis and tools around funding for the future, also programmatic ideas, and implement strategies to have measurable and resilient strategies for the future, be an environmental solution catalyst, support ideas that foster economic development, environmental and climate development. also a skills development component to strengthen technical abilities, and partnerships for action, bring together stakeholders so we can design together, act together, invest together in resilience, South-South cooperation, and triangular cooperation. We also have an AI Atlas for human development, which we launched a few days ago, that talks more about the potential of AI for human development in Latin America and the Caribbean. So I will close with that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Almudena, for that very clear and compelling presentation that gives us a clear vision of the report, and we will wait for its publication so we can look into more details. And thank you very much for doing that closing with a proposal into the future with a set of tools. Now we will have a panel of specialists that will be led by our chief economist for human development here in Brazil, Bettina Barbosa. Bettina. Good morning, everyone. I will speak in Portuguese. We have a few Brazilian participants and some international participants. And just to talk about that greater concern, which is based on the Human Development Report, and make this available to the Latin America and Caribbean region, we want to make available some tools that can facilitate public policy development. I think this is part of the work that we are doing in coordination with you, putting together a clear idea of what we're doing in Latin America and the Caribbean, and based on that, offer a series of tools that can improve efficiencies, making us more efficient when creating public policies in our different countries. I have with us Mr. Alamir Freire. He is the head of the Northeastern Bank of Brazil, Banco do Nordeste. This is a very important development bank. They cover a region of about 60 million Brazilians, and this is the region that works with what we call dry lands, filled with a series of challenges. This is a region that also has lower human development situations. This is what we see in this region. We have Federico Andrade. He is the CEO and co-founder of Indigo River. This is actually a startup, an AI company that looks for integration solutions like platforms, integration tools. We also have Ms. Nuvia Villanova, head of the Business Council in the Ibero-American Alliance, and I believe this is the right word for it, or the right name for it in Portuguese. Welcome, ma'am. We have Mariano Laplani. He is an Argentinian economist. He has been living in Brazil for many years now. And since 2024 and 2025, did advisory work for President Dilma Rousseff. Jaime Diaz from the Central American Economic Development Bank. He will tell us, he will talk about Central America. This panel will talk about those transformations around human development, including Latin America and the Caribbean, and how is it that our institutions impact public policies. Can they first use the numbers that are in our report? Can these numbers be references? And can we use tools that Latin America and the Caribbean suggest as tools to boost human development in the region? So thank you very much, Claudio, for giving me the floor. I'm actually very honored. It is an honor for Brazil to listen to Ms. Michelle Busset and be in the center of this debate and look into what this report has found. We are in the triple forum from IBGE that gathers BRICS entities, Mercosur, and Portuguese-speaking countries. So we are honored to have you all in this debate, and I will start by asking Mr. Jose, what are the Northeastern Bank policies that can help you sit down and debate after seeing the Regional Human Development Report, and in what way is Banco Nordeste putting together a specific credit mechanism that can be connected with the challenges that the report is highlighting. Thank you for being here, sir. Thank you to all the colleagues here in the table and to all the people here today, and those of you signing in virtually. First, I would like to congratulate you all for this great report. Given all the challenges we are facing nowadays, for the Caribbean as well, and I would like to say that the bank is honored to have a slight representation and talk about some of the concerns around this session, especially when we are talking about unpacking these series of situations and building resilience. Now, today we will cover two programs that I believe are a paradigm shift, not only for Brazil, but actually for all of Latin America. You said something about Agro Amigo or Agro Friend, but we have two programs, one for rural areas, Agro Friend, and the rural one, which is Credit Amigo or Credit Friend. These two programs are about a third of all the volume that the bank funded last year. Last year, we funded 60 billion reals, and only 20 billion went into microcredit. What is this microcredit program? This is a production program focused on, it is not a retail credit. It's actually for small entrepreneurs. So it goes a lot into growing. Sometimes we listen to stories that are beautiful that spring out of nowhere and people build assets out of that. Our credit starts at very low amounts, somewhere about 300 reals. So loans start from $50 approximately. Today we have 3.5 million people in this program, and per day we process 17 million operations. So we support small businesses. What is most interesting about this, like you said before, talking about who is living in this informality, a great issue that a lot of these people go through is having access to credit, because with informality, you have no guarantees. The bank has no guarantees, and no one will lend money without having a guarantee. And our programs have no guarantee. This is a solidary guarantee. We put it in groups of 3 to 10 people. These are small entrepreneurs. In the case of microcredit products for urban people, 70% are women. In the rural one, 51% are women. And if you take maybe 3 to 10 entrepreneurs, each one of them is actually the backup or the collateral for the rest. So they all work together in order to keep the program running. And we have a credit rep who goes and sees these people. This person, he or she, will go there and work with these people. We have about 70 or 80 groups, and this person will get to know every single person who's gotten these credit products, because this person lives in the community. We have about 6,000 to 7,000 credit reps with their own portfolio, and they get bonuses not only for lending, but also based on default rates. And the default rate in these groups is very small, less than 2%, without any collateral. So a loan that oftentimes has a term of 6 months, and you see people selling maybe popsicles out on the beach, making purses, cakes, hairdressers, hair salons. So this is one of the most amazing things we work with. We also work with some other elements that we add to this. Aside from the credit products, we also provide assistance. Our rep goes out there, helps this person. So it's not only a credit product. If the person wants to expand their store, renovate their store, the credit rep goes over there and assesses this person. It's all digital. We use an app for it. Everything can be done via their cell phone. They sign the contract using their cell phone as well. Everything is digital. Then we go on to offering some other security services. So this person gets the product, and for $1 or $2 a month, they get a life insurance. If he or she ends up no longer working, the insurance will cover them, and the insurance, if he or she cannot pay for the insurance, we offer a third insurance package, which is a free or an open insurance for accidents that happen inside your residence, and sometimes you do not have coverage for that. We have it for we have a kind of home insurance for accidents or work insurance. So this insurance coverage covers everything. So say they're struck by a lightning and their fridge breaks down and they have no power for 3 days, their entire stock goes bad, and no insurance will cover that. So for just $1 to $2 a month, we also cover their work supplies, what they generally keep in their homes. So their homes are covered, but their materials are covered, whatever they use in their home. So it's not only cheaper credit products versus what they would get out in the market. We are actually providing assistance, and we walk with them throughout the process. One of these programs is turning 26 years old. The other one has been around for 16 years. This is a program that does not exist in Brazil. It's actually pretty big up in the Northeast, so much so that the Northeast dominates with 70% of microcredit products in Brazil. This is one of the most amazing programs we have. This is a flagship program for other regions in the country. We know that mimicking or replicating this program can be difficult. We've been doing it for 25 years. We have a lot of experience, baggage, and just to wrap up, today we are moving into 2 business areas. We are now working together with social development. This is the ministry that covers everything, especially people living in a vulnerable situation. Last year, we lended about 500 million reals, about $6 million, to people who are registered in the social security system. This year, we will be lending 1 billion reals. What this means is letting people come out of social benefits, and we are not saying that because the person is coming out of getting the benefits, they will be okay. Today, it's everything about having formal work. So we are working with companies so that people get formal employment, and even if the person breaks through the poverty line, he or she will not quickly be better because they're getting the benefit. Even if they're getting the benefit, even if they're getting wages, this person will not come out of the registry right away, because should this person go back to that situation they were in the past, they will have to be included once again in the system so they can get these benefits. And something we need to review sometimes is, since I work in the financing area, we see that funding or financing so we can increase the resilience of municipalities and states is something that has proven to be challenging. There is a disconnect between public management rationale and fiscal policy in the economy and a series of other needs for resources focusing on resilience. So, for example, it is necessary to invest in the northeastern region of Brazil, given the shortages that they go through, or in the Amazon region, or in the Caribbean region. A lot more investment needs to go there. So there is an overall need, I believe, and the region definitely does need it. The northeastern side of Brazil, the Amazon region of Brazil, and being able to access international resources and some other resources so we can highlight how much investment is needed in these areas. You see, these regions did not cause the climate disasters we go through now. If we take a look at the Northeast, they are the biggest provider in the world for renewable energies, but the world doesn't pay them back in any way, shape, or form. The Amazon is a great environmental services provider for the world, and people still kind of pay attention to the Amazon, but they never pay attention to the Northeast. We always circle back to the fact that no energy transition, all energy transition goes through Brazil, and all of them go through the Northeast. Last year, the energy transition, the renewable energy from Brazil came from the northeastern part. But what is the northeastern part getting back from this renewable energy transformation? As a matter of fact, they're getting the opposite. They're going through droughts and extreme climates, extreme weather conditions happen a lot in this region. And we want the population to be more resilient in these situations that we see more and more. This is something we call fiscal responsibility, so that these populations get more investments for regions that are scarcely populated. And we will be doing some of that work with some international partners, and that will take us into something else. But those are some other conversations. Thank you very much, Director Aldemir Freire. I think that a lot of these items go right to what the report is saying, and given the fact that Brazil is already concerned about the use of technology and how technology can reach these microcredit products. So thank you for embracing our ideas, and hopefully we can contribute together. And about modern resilience and taking on climate challenges in the region, these points are very important. And again, congratulations for the work you do over there at the Northeastern Bank. And in the same line of thought in this conversation, allow me to invite Federico Andrade for the next interjection. He is an AI expert. Federico, good morning. Welcome, sir. Welcome to this debate. And I would like to, sir, please, let's have you talk about those technological transformations, and in what way can your company, and using AI platforms, how do they assist Brazil to take that leap forward in technology and face these disruptive times? Thank you. Welcome. Good morning. Thank you for having me. It is an honor for me to be here with you again. And understanding this, we have to know that AI is more than a technological frontier. It's actually a cognitive frontier. A lot is said about AI in automation processes and a restructuring based on that. But what do we see more and more? AI changes the way people connect with each other, and I will share some examples of some of the work we've done proudly here as Brazilians, work we've done locally. The first thing is that AI is an inclusion tool. I always like to talk about my grandfather, who had never used anything electronic, and he was a doctor. He's a doctor. He used to be a doctor, and without knowing it, he uses a tool every day. This is an AI tool from the health sector that we've created, and he tells me, oh my boy, I think you've been hiring a lot of people because they answer very quick. If I ask a question, they answer very quick. These are texts that are actually embedded in the WhatsApp chat system in the bot. And this is AI data, large segments of data with answers based on scientific information. So I think this proves to show how important awareness is. And today we provide educational awareness to builders via WhatsApp, and we were told that they were never going to go for reaching out to us virtually. So I think there are transformational tools out there. We developed an AI technology, which we know is the biggest Christian AI. We know that it is the biggest one in Brazil. That awareness is very common, and it happens more and more. This is an AI used in different classes, not only to know about the Bible or to read a psalm. It's also about solving situations like loneliness, or maybe going through a social or emotional situation, maybe a separation, and that AI can actually answer in an adaptive way. So the person can actually identify people's accent. It can actually identify if the person is more mellow or simpler, and adapt to their tone, the tone in their conversation. So this is one way to use AI. I really like the phrase from one of our advisors, and they said, AI is a tool to cut corners in the man and machine relationship. So there is a series of possibilities that are unlocked for a country as diverse as Brazil, so that we can help people that would take too long to access these technologies. And richer people have these technologies in the tip of their fingers. So I really like to think about people farming the land and solving complex situations and things they could not do in another situation because it would be so expensive. All they need is a little bit of internet, very little memory in their phone, sending voice notes without needing to code. That's the first part of it, accessibility. The second part of it is cognitive barriers, which we have been seeing and we've been guided through them. And let me just explain what I do. This is one of the most powerful tools so we can make the best decisions. This is one of the biggest dangers. As we trust that premise, we are vulnerable to mistakes because AI can make mistakes. But there is a mechanism so we can safeguard all this. It hasn't been spread. It's actually called AI alignment. And in that, we have things like security concerns that you can embed in the language of the AI, mitigation mechanisms in the answers you get from the AI tool, and also training capabilities we can implement. We have models that are very famous, actually, and we've created a specialized version in Portuguese with all the necessary specs. One of the most questioned areas nowadays is how can we turn AI into a more reliable tool for people? And today we see a lot of scientific evidence out there from the Brazilian team. Something very nice is that Brazil, for a long time, was a country that published a lot about neurosymbolic intelligence with a rules and decisions-based system that were very controlled, with a probabilistic or a likelihood system, but with some mistakes because the AI is always thinking, and people joke around saying if you ask the AI a lot of times how much is 1 plus 1, 1 plus 1, it may end up saying 1 plus 1 is 3 because it can have some kind of sense of humor. So thanks to that pioneering spirit in the neurosymbolic AI world, we now know that we are in the top 30 countries that uses AI, and something we've been seeing as a nation and bringing about more possibilities. Say a person from the northeastern side of the country that never before had a chance to change their reality. We could then take the different things that this person is offering and sell them, sell whatever they produce, sell it in Dubai, maybe, by using some of these tools. Something that's interesting to me is that the smartest people in Brazil would go to some of these expos and they would never come back, and people you admired were never going to come back to Brazil. So we were having a bit of brain drain, and now it can be happening in the other direction, and now we can keep some of these people. And in order to do that, we need to understand where we are in the AI value chain. We have no way to compete in the infrastructure side of it, or in the different models. In the Middle East, they do it very well. And larger nations like Brazil, we are more in the application world, where there's more of a powerful socioeconomic value that can be untapped. We do not want to put together a new language model, but actually use a language model that already exists and use it for real-life cases, responsible real-life cases, and cost-effective. And this is part of what was raised, a question that was raised through one platform. This is the mechanism where you link a situation with a series of technologies that are being developed in the market. So it is definitely something very useful and necessary. There's a very nice thing about AI that we're seeing now, and that is the role AI has in helping people to do more relevant things, and this is happening more and more. I think we may end up diving into something new, and when we untap or when we streamline bureaucratic processes, maybe a person working at a call center can now switch and work doing something else, maybe work on customer service. This was a great thing because we thought this was going to generate many, many layoffs, and it was actually the opposite. A lot of these people got promoted, and it was a positive thing, even though we have to be careful about this whole thing. Thank you very much, Federico. You've raised some very interesting issues. Actually, some of what you've said is included in the regional report, and Brazil is already considered in the 14th or 13th spot when it comes to development. We call this assistable or assisting technologies when it comes to AI and new technologies. But thank you very much for your comments, a very enriching set of comments, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Now I will call Mariano. He is an economist and recently started working with China along with the BRICS Bank. And I would like to ask you, sir, how is the bank preparing to work with all those technological transformations and at the same time disruptive transformations? How do you see those specific issues over at the New Development Bank? Thank you. It is actually I who has to say thank you. I am always honored to be a part of this panel. It is always a great pleasure to sit down and talk about development and economics, social responsibility, or social awareness. This is all very much connected to development. These ideas hold the dreams, hopes, thoughts of prosperity and well-being and the well-being of humanity. Because this is something that has so many layers in critical situations and in crucial times, changing times, this is something that has to be revisited. and we have to think about giving it a new focus. But I believe that, or I'm actually very happy about this approach, the regional report specifically, most definitely, well, this fits the times right now. We live what the report is telling us. We are anxious about technological changes, AI and other changes. It is a time of impacts brought about by climate change, oftentimes mentioned, but now this is a reality. We see more fragmentation of society. We see the rise of new ways of social interaction and other ways being more fragile. And why not? We must acknowledge that times of interpersonal relationships is now going through a bit of a rough patch, and there are some tensions there. People struggling to talk to each other, unilateral positions, exclusions, sanctions, a series of obstacles, how people think and talk to each other and exchange ideas. It is a very anxious time. So I am happy to see some common grounds based on what I saw and what I participated in at the BRICS Bank in Shanghai, and also some of the ideas that came out of the report, the Regional Human Development Report. Because you see, the bank is a young bank. It will turn 10 years soon. Some of these years were COVID years. This is definitely a difficulty for any seasoned company or institution, and much more so for an institution that was being created, and the bank continues to be in an under construction situation. But some modalities, like I said before, that cross paths with what the report is saying. So the bank has a focus on infrastructure, not on microcredit, but actually on infrastructure. Sanitation, energy, urban mobility, health, digital infrastructure. So the bank was created to use these technologies and infrastructures and make them available to countries. And it has been pretty successful. The bank has been able to fund more than 100 projects, large projects. I am talking about some projects that are $20 million worth. Some other ones are $200 million worth. A lot of them have already been built and are operating successfully. And with a very specific concern when it comes to sustainability. So infrastructure has a sustainable part of it, and this is what we've been talking about today. The bank that is still growing is also ambitious to become a node for technology, a driver of technology, and making technology more sustainable, and hopefully offering countries those types of solutions, like the 2 projects I worked for in the bank last year. These projects were attempting to set up an area within the bank that would focus on innovation towards sustainability based on cases, based on products that had, or projects that had already been funded by the bank. So we could use them as a fund of it, or as a source of inspiration for countries or regions that may be facing similar situations. The bank has some nuances that I believe are important to mention. Like it was said before, large projects need international funds, and usually these are tied to a series of conditions. This is the case of the bank. The bank doesn't want to know if the country asks for a credit product, if it's attached by some kind of economic policy. Are they enrolled with the central bank? Are they over the GDP rate? The bank sees it as a whole, separately. Now, on sustainability, whether it be environmental, economic, or social, we look at these things, and if it's a good project, the bank will fund it. This is an important feature. There are no conditions. The second feature is also important. The bank offers resources in the local currency. It does not demand that products are obtained in dollars. The bank goes out to the market, getting different currencies, and therefore it can lend in different currencies. Risk structure changes. This is usually connected to different types of funding. This does not mean, though, that the country cannot get a loan or get funding in dollars. They can, but they are not obligated to. A third feature of the bank that I believe is worth highlighting is that this is not a bank that has only one owner. It doesn't even have one main owner or partner. The bank was created with 5 main partners, but the number of partners has increased. They are now 10 partners. The last partner who started was Argelia. The next country will be Indonesia. These are countries that have decision-making power based on their position as a shareholder. The countries that created the bank, Brazil, China, South Africa, Russia, and South Korea, have a majority vote, and all the decisions in the bank were made through dialogue and consensus. There is not a single director in the bank like in other banks that are multilateral, that no one is above anyone. There is no bank owner. If the bank needs collective action and dialogue, and I think this is a feature that we should highlight because it proves that dialogue, cooperation is possible. Unilateral positions and saying who is a friend or not a friend only worsens development and makes countries weaker. So those 3 features are very important and very much connected to the global and regional report. The bank is in the process of getting new tools, new instruments to become more important and relevant for social development. In that sense of the word, I will ask my colleagues or former colleagues from the bank, because I'm back in Brazil, I will ask them for the report and do thorough analysis and look for converging points. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mariano. We will wait for that feedback from the bank, and we will make ourselves available so we can have some dialogue with the Development Bank. And now, our last important guest, a very important guest, Mr. Jaime Diaz. He is the VP at the Central American Bank for Economic Integration, and we would like to listen from him about that tool that the UNDP created and presented. This is a resilience facility funding tool or financing tool. What is the usefulness of this tool in your field? Did you understand what I said? Yes, I did. Thank you very much, sir. So, my ear is well trained for Portuguese and Spanish, but I will do it in Spanish so you can understand what I'm saying. First of all, I would like to thank Michelle Musquet and Aldumena for this important report. I believe Latin America is compelled to reading it and reviewing it because it gives us very important tools so we can understand the sources of uncertainty in the Latin American and Caribbean region. Allow me to tell you a little bit about our bank. We also crossroads with some of the diagnostics, and we see those uncertainty shocks in the region. When we put together the strategy last year, and as I listened to previous interjections, we called it a strategy for a different world. And that is because the world we knew, and when the Central American Bank was created, we lived in a world that is way different to the world we live in today. And these type of situations do appear, just like Almudena mentioned today. I would like to thank our panel speakers and for specifying something, and that is how easy it is to present all this that we are presenting today. First of all, I would like to highlight the fact that the diagnosis is correct. There are three sources of uncertainty that are shaping the environment where we work. First is interconnected crises. First, linked to climate change, and this is something we face every day in the Central American region. Let me just give you an example. When the COVID pandemic hit in 2020, then in 2021, we got hit with two of the largest hurricanes and tropical storms that happened in the region. A lot of the infrastructure that for years had been funded and built in the region was affected. A lot of the communities were then disconnected. And the report and what it is saying today is that climate crises and disasters caused by these climate changes are not only more frequent but actually stronger. And we in Central America is that 9% of GDP come from sectors that are climate sensitive. Last year in December, we formalized a funding to a multimodal company in the north of Honduras in the Sula Valley so we could fund this infrastructure that will mitigate the negative impacts of climate change. And when we listen to the private sector and the public sector and civil society, the dramatic impact around human development is 60% of floods happen because of these effects, and they have a strong impact not only on unemployment and also on social infrastructure, but also in the loss of lives that are very, very high costs. So resilience in infrastructure is a very important topic for us, and what the Central American Bank has created is this is now in the DNA of our projects. Let me just give you an example. Yesterday, in the directory that is being celebrated this week, they approved something for El Salvador. This is road infrastructure and urban mobility, and the infrastructure part of it is already complementing together with all the research, but also preparing projects and building infrastructure that is climate change resilient, and is not only does it consider an adaptation agenda and focusing on natural disasters, it is also paying a lot of attention to a mitigation agenda with a lesser impact on CO2 generation, or looking for less CO2 generation. This is not the only diagnosis. The next diagnosis is a fragile institutionality we see. And this is an important, we see UNDP as an important partner. If I may give you an example of how we've been working together. Here in Honduras, we fund the adoption of new technologies for a new identification system. This is an identification system that will allow Honduran citizens to have access to formality. We all know that in Latin America, formality is a great, great issue. But here, We're talking about not only having access to becoming a citizen, access to minimal public assets, put together a company, to develop as a person, as a citizen. Why is this such a sensitive project? Well, A, it was put together during COVID. B, it was put together in a short period of time because we were about to go into election period, and C, we had to add some advanced technological functions that did not exist in our region. This project actually won prizes. It's been one of the backbones for strengthening institutionality in Honduras, especially in terms of access to an ID and also strengthening electoral system altogether. So in such specific things like we've been covering, like infrastructure, you can start to shorten some of the gaps, but the issue is where sometimes there's more uncertainty and little knowledge around is the disruption that new information technologies are bringing about. And about that, I agree that the proposal can maybe help to find pragmatic solutions, do a better diagnosis of the problem, and maybe improve the kind of investments that banks are making. Let me just share another example. When we approved the Salvadorian project, this has not only a climate component, but also an intelligence component where urban corridors are optimized. We place cameras and intelligence systems that attempt to improve the quality of people's lives, bringing down average times in corridors, but also protect pedestrians and cyclists in these roads. So the way we look at technology in the report, like I said, about 28% of jobs will be impacted by new technologies or by automation or by AI, but 1 to 6% will be affected through whether the elimination of those jobs, and we have to look into these opportunities. And I truly believe that we can work on recalibrating the future for Latin America and become pioneers. We, as a development bank, work strongly and very close, and we want to insert this into our strategy so we can have a better understanding of this new sector. And how can we bring about specific solutions? How can the private sector have an important position? And how can we especially look into the biggest gaps, the most important gaps, and bring social benefits, health benefits, education benefits, and how the digital gap can continue to shorten. The Central American Bank is an entity that most people do not know, but it is one of the best Central American bank going into investments. It was created some years ago with $20 million with 6 countries, and now we are managing about $20 billion in assets. We've surpassed that record last month, and today we have a solid bank that has a global presence. Today, we have not only the 5 countries that founded it, we have Panama and the Dominican Republic as regional countries. We also have Mexico, Colombia, Argentina. So we can have a presence in the entire hemisphere and in the Caribbean with the Dominican Republic, Cuba, which is a country and a market where we work together with UNDP, so we can not only mobilize resources, but also maximize and catalyze resources. But it's a global market. Today we have Korea, Japan, and Spain that allow us to not only strengthen the level of capital we have, but also allows us to bring practical solutions to the market that come from those countries. I was in Spain last week, and some of the conversations we had with our counterparts is that a lot of the problems Spain is going through, like climate change, technological disruptions, social fragmentation, like we see in the report, they also have solutions that they've been able to identify. So knowledge and being a bank, as a bank, knowledge becomes important. So these type of facilities align very well with development banking. We signed an agreement some time ago with UNDP so we could work with a series of initiatives that would allow us to elevate the impact of our operations. We've already started working with acquiring some institutions. We've been working with some projects that I've already mentioned, and we would like to continue the conversation so we can hopefully identify how to find actionable items so we can recalibrate development in the Latin American region. I really commend bringing these facilities, talking about innovative financing. This is what we do. We put together projects all the way from design to implementation, but how can we do more intelligent development, use intelligence for development? I would like to close saying that CABE is today strengthened and decided to put together projects, initiatives that can allow us to recalibrate development for the region, that will continue to develop human capital amongst our populations and our inhabitants. Thank you. Vice President of the Central American Bank for Economic Integration, thank you very much for everything you've said and your message. Now, switching over to Portuguese and switching over to Mr. Claudio. Thank you for your words and for your approach. And now wrapping up in Portuguese and handing it over to Claudio, head of UNDP in Brazil. Based on what we've seen in this dialogue, it seems as if we are not doing the same as always. We're doing things differently. Go ahead, Claudio. Thank you very much, Bettina. And I'm actually very happy, and this goes past putting together an academic product and a thinking product. This has a tool attached to it, but today it was able to bring together a number of experts, decision makers, lawmakers, government officials, development banks, development specialists, and development banks that mentioned tools like rural tools and urban tools. I was also interested by what Mariana was presenting, banks that are at the service of people, attempting to mitigate that polarization or those programs that can be conditioned or polarizing in the region with a new vision of the global south, a global south that brings us here today in Fortaleza in Brazil. Thank you to IBGE, which is a legendary institution in Brazil that supports developing human development atlas, even at the municipal level, that are key so we can make those decisions and decisions that lead to programs, policies and programs that are resistant, resilient, and can boost. And Michelle was reminding us of about vulnerability and some clashes, but also stagnation of economic growth in all of Latin America and the Caribbean, one of the richest regions, one of the richest in natural resources. But we talked about the climate crisis in some countries like Brazil that is having an ecological and energy transformation that is so great. They are subject to or exposed to different climate vulnerabilities. I am referring to droughts and floods. On the other hand, thank the government of Ceará, of the state of Ceará, the First Lady of the government of Ceará. She's talked about the Zero Hunger Program, which is a priority item in Brazil's agenda, together with reducing inequality and poverty. And thank you to Federico Andrade, the digital part of it. He talked about very specific examples. I would like to highlight inclusivity, added value, and complementarity. These are some things he mentioned when it comes to AI in the service of development. So thank you, everyone. It is an honor to have been able to facilitate these sessions. Thank you, Bettina. Thank you, Almudena. Thank you, Jose, Mariano. Thank you for being here. at the table with us, Michelle and the entire team, and the government of Spain, the Spanish Cooperation Agency, our partner in this endeavor of human development in Latin America. Thank you once again.